the story. The following is a translation of a field diary recovered in 1991 near Kharkiv, in what was then the newly independent state of Ukraine. The translator's notes are included where relevant. The diary belongs to Unteroffizier Klaus Fenner, 2nd Company, 320th Infantry Division, Wehrmacht. The entries cover the period from October 12th to December 7th, 1943. The diary was found in a sealed tobacco tin, wrapped in oilcloth, inside a leather satchel beneath the concrete foundation of a farmhouse that had been partially demolished during construction of a new road. Fenner does not appear in any surviving Wehrmacht casualty records, transfer records, or prisoner of war documentation. His fate is entirely unknown. A note on the translation. Fenner writes in a formal, educated style unusual for a man of his rank. He uses an extensive vocabulary and a precise syntax that suggests he may have had some secondary or post-secondary education before the war. His handwriting is very small and very consistent throughout the diary until the final entries, where it begins to change. This change in handwriting is noted in the translation where it occurs. October 12, 1943. Rain again. The mud here is unlike anything I encountered in France or the Low Countries during the early years. It has a depth to it, a willingness to swallow things whole and return no evidence of their having existed. Hartmann lost a boot yesterday, pulled free by the suction of the road's shoulder, and it was simply gone before he could reach for it. The earth took it without comment. We are dug in along a tree line east of a village whose name I have already forgotten. The Soviets are somewhere across the open ground to our front. We hear their vehicles at night, but they do not push. Whether this is patience or indecision or the preparation for something larger, I cannot say. Rations adequate, morale tolerable, which in the 4th year of this war is the best one can reasonably hope for. October 28, 1943. First frost. The mud hardens and becomes workable. This is something to be grateful for. The cold that hardens mud also hardens the ground enough to sleep on, which the men prefer to the alternative, and it makes the forest floor legible again. You can hear movement. You can track, you can read the night by sound in a way that the wet weeks made impossible. I have been grateful for small things since 1941. Weidemann killed a rabbit in a snare behind the position. We ate it between 4 of us, and it was the finest thing I have tasted in 6 months. One becomes, in this war, a connoisseur of small mercies. October 3rd, 1943. This is the entry I have been putting off writing for 2 days. I have been trying to find a frame for it, a context, a rational explanation I could offer alongside the facts. I have not found one. I am going to set down the facts. On the night of November 1st, Sergeant Klauer's patrol encountered a Soviet section moving along the creek bed to the south of our position. 12 men, in column, no vehicle support, moving in the direction of our lines with the careful deliberateness of men who believe they are unobserved. We have been watching this particular creek bed for 3 weeks, since the intelligence summary identified it as a likely Soviet approach route. Klauer set an ambush in the standard configuration, his 8 men positioned along the bank above, triggers assigned, withdrawal route confirmed. The Soviet section entered the kill zone at approximately 2200 hours. The ambush was executed cleanly. All 12 Soviet soldiers were killed in the initial burst. Klauer moved his men in to clear and confirm. I was not on the patrol. I am recording what Klauer told me in the first 15 minutes after his return, sitting in my dugout, before he had eaten or changed out of his wet clothes. He said, "I walked the line myself. I always walked the line myself. I counted 12 bodies, and I checked 12 bodies, and Castle put a round into each of the ones with any ambiguity. 12 confirmed dead Soviet soldiers in the creek bed. I did the job correctly. I have been doing this job correctly for 2 years." He paused here. Klauer is not a man who pauses. He is a man who fills silences the way water fills a container, smoothly, completely, without apparent effort. He said, "Klaus, I am looking at those same 12 men right now." I looked where he was indicating, through the dugout's forward aperture. Across the field, in the last gray light before full dark, a column of 12 soldiers was moving west along the field's edge, parallel to our line, 200 meters distant. Single file, even spacing. The same unhurried pace that Klauer had described from the creek bed, the pace of men who have somewhere to be and sufficient time to get there. I watched them until the darkness took them. I have set this down. I believe in the discipline of accurate record-keeping, and this is what 2 reliable witnesses observed. I am certain there is a rational explanation. Perhaps Klauer miscounted. Perhaps a second Soviet section was following the first. Perhaps the column we observed was an entirely unrelated unit using the same route. I am keeping this record precisely so that I can return to it later and identify where my reasoning was flawed. November 7th, 1943. The rational explanation has not materialized. I am updating this entry because I believe I have an obligation to record what has happened with the same precision I applied to the initial entry. On the night of November 4th, a Soviet column using the Eastern Road was engaged by our artillery on the orders of Lieutenant Brandt, who had received intelligence of a regimental-strength movement. The concentration was heavy and accurate. A ground sweep by 2 platoons, my platoon included, was conducted the following morning. I am going to describe what I saw on the Eastern Road. I am going to describe it accurately and without embellishment. Among the confirmed dead, Lieutenant Brandt identified a section of 12 men. He identified them by their unit markings, which were consistent with the markings Klauer had described from the November 1st engagement. Brandt photographed the bodies. He had a Leica with him. He was one of those officers who documented everything. And he used nearly a full roll of film. I stood at his shoulder while he worked. I watched him photograph. The photographs exist, or existed. They were in Brandt's personal effects, which were recovered when he was killed near Poltava in January 1944. The same 12 men that Klauer's patrol killed on November 1st. I understand how that sentence reads. I am aware that it is not a sentence that a rational man should be writing. But I stood at Brandt's shoulder, and I looked at each of those 12 faces, and I had seen those faces before, described to me by Klauer the morning after the creek bed ambush, and I recognized them, and Brandt and Klauer and 8 other men from this company recognized them too, and we all looked at each other, and nobody said what we were all thinking, because saying it would have required us to accept something that we were not prepared to accept. On the night of November 7th, at approximately 23:30 hours, Private Hartmann, the same steady, reliable Hartmann who lost his boot in the October mud, came to my dugout and said only, "Unteroffizier, come outside." I came outside.
Across the snow-covered field, in the moonlight, a column of 12 soldiers was walking west. They were at a distance of perhaps 150 meters. The moonlight was good enough for detail. I could see their faces. I will record here what I observed about those faces, because I believe precise observation is my only reliable tool at this point. They were the faces of living men. Color in the skin, despite the cold. Eyes open, tracking forward. They moved with the natural irregularity of bodies, a slight sway, adjustments of balance on the uneven snow. They breathed. Their breath clouded in the cold air. But they did not speak. Not one word. Not between themselves. Not any sound of exertion or discomfort in the cold. And they did not look at us. We were standing in full view at the edge of our position, 5 men watching them cross the open ground, and they did not look. They looked ahead, and they walked west, and they walked through the darkness until we could no longer see them. I did not sleep that night.
He had an earnestness that had survived 8 months on the Eastern Front, which is a remarkable thing to survive. He was brave in a way that was separate from recklessness. He acted when action seemed necessary, not from a desire to prove something. I think he genuinely believed he might find something useful, a Soviet staging area, a supply route, something that could be reported up the chain and would serve a purpose. He came back 4 hours later. His fingers were frostbitten on the right hand, 3 of them, the last 3. His right ear was white and had to be treated immediately. He was shaking in the total body way of a man whose core temperature has dropped, and we warmed him with our bodies and with whatever heat we could generate, and we waited for him to be able to talk. When he could form words, I asked, "What happened?" He said, "They stopped, in the middle of the field. Not slowing down, not finding an obstacle, they stopped simultaneously, all 12, as if a command had been given, except no command was given, and they don't speak. They stopped, and they turned." A pause. They turned around, all 12 of them, at the same moment, like a single thing with 12 parts, and they were facing me. I asked, "What did you do?" He said, I ran and I didn't stop, and I didn't look back for a long time, and when I finally looked back, they were still in the field, still standing, still watching me run." I asked, "Were they moving after you?" He looked at me for a long time before answering. "No, they were just watching, and they were smiling. All 12 of them. The same smile. Exactly the same, on 12 different faces, like someone had placed it there." Engel was evacuated the following day with the frostbite. I did not see him again.
And here is the thing I am sealing this diary to preserve, because I do not trust my memory to hold it correctly, and I need it preserved correctly. When they had gone perhaps 200 meters, I counted them by habit. I have counted them every time. It is the kind of automatic observation that becomes second nature after years of assessing enemy forces. I counted 13, not 12. 13 men in that column where there have always been 12. I am putting this tin in the ground under the farmhouse floor, and I am putting this diary in the tin because I am not going to be able to carry it after tonight, and I want the record to survive even if I do not. I do not know who the 13th man is. I do not know when he joined them. I do not know if he knows. Translator's postscript appended to the recovered document. I was asked, when I completed this translation, whether the account was genuine, whether the diary was a real primary document or a fabrication of some kind. I am a historian by training, not a folklorist, and I answered the question with the tools available to me. The physical diary is genuine in every testable respect. The paper stock dates correctly to the 1940s by both composition and aging analysis. The ink formulation is consistent with standard Wehrmacht field issue writing materials of the period. The leather cover shows wear patterns consistent with extended field use over months rather than artificial aging. The tobacco tin in which it was found contained residue consistent with mid-century German commercial tobacco manufacture. There is no forensic evidence of forgery. Klaus Fenner is, as I noted in the introduction, entirely absent from Wehrmacht records. This is unusual, but not impossible. Records of the Eastern Front were damaged and destroyed in enormous quantity during the German retreat, and the 320th Infantry Division's company-level paperwork survives only in fragments. Fenner's absence from the record proves nothing. What I find harder to account for are the photographs. Lieutenant Brandt took photographs of the bodies after the November 7th engagement. This is noted in the diary, and Brandt is a verifiable individual who appears in divisional records. What the diary does not mention, because Fenner could not have known it, is that a folder of photographs was recovered from Brandt's personal effects in January 1944 when he was killed near Poltava, and those effects were inventoried by his battalion. The photograph inventory lists, among landscape shots and portraits of other soldiers, a series of 12 photographs labeled in Brandt's hand as Creek Bed Ambush, November. Those photographs were inventoried. They were transferred, with other personal effects, to a storage facility in Germany in 1944. They have not been located since. I mention this only for completeness. The absence of photographs is not evidence of anything. I also mention, for completeness, that I translated this diary between October and December 1995, working alone in a small office in the history department of Kharkiv University. During the weeks I spent with the final entries, the entries from November onward, as the column begins appearing and the diary's tone changes, I began leaving the office light on when I left. I began avoiding the window after dark, which faced east across a large open field. I did not look at the field. I do not know why. I was not aware of making that decision. I simply found repeatedly that I was not looking at it. I have not looked out an east-facing window after dark since December 1995. I mention this only because I believe in accurate record-keeping. Sleep well.
There are no required gears to participate in this class, but you should bring your own water bottle or purchase a protein shake at the store.